the world where strategy defines survival, Manor Lords reshapes city building. The game with most realistic graphics. The destroyer of PCs. The game which we all love and hate. The game which millions of us wanted but never got. And today, I have managed to build the largest city in Manor Lords. A game which captivates and frustrates. A game which changed the city building industry. A game which tests your strategic skills. A game which promises so much potential. A game which deserves to be watched and played once more. As this is the pinnacle of city building simulation. Welcome to Manor Lords.
Welcome to Manor Lords, boys and girls, as it is time to test this game to its maximum potential. I will show you how I managed to reach over 2,500 people in one tile. It wasn't easy, but trust me, it was worth it, hopefully. It all starts with a good old logging camp, followed by a berry picking hut. My goal was clear from the beginning: maximize and speed up the villager growth by building as many berg spots as possible, practically speedrunning the game. My first street of houses was small and lacked gardening land behind them, which became a big problem as I realized that living off berries and hunted animals would not support my population growth in the future, but the domino effect had already commenced before I even realized it. The logic behind my actions was to save space by cramping the houses as close and tight as possible, thinking I could colonize this land to its fullest. I had played this game before attempting this challenge, and the trick I used in other games was to give a berg plot a lot of gardening land, allowing it to be used as a practical farm. However, in this game, the gardening land was smaller and had a set limit, which unfortunately limited my prospects of having a large farm of vegetables, which ideally was a bad sign already. Despite these red flags, I continued to build more and even more houses, thinking I could just buy more food from the trading posts to substitute from the fields. In the beginning of this campaign, it was mostly about balancing firewood and food production since both were needed. The interesting part about firewood was that the game is in its alpha stage and is still blunt and buggy. Over time, it seemed that the gap between firewood and food became more and more apparent. That was before I crossed the 500 population mark. Up to 500 people, everything was working well, and the economy wasn't broken yet. I managed to create a couple of farms with wheat to help my village's food supplies, as the blunder I made at the start of the campaign severely impacted my food production. I couldn't outpace the villager growth with my food production until I managed to get my first wheat field, and most importantly, trading post. But the game was only beginning to dramatically change after I crossed the 500 population mark. After reaching 500 people, I stopped making houses with small farms and focused on creating large houses blocks so I could gain more villagers rather than focusing on food and firewood. But when I crossed the 500 person limit, I suddenly started getting an absurd amount of gold from nowhere. Like, the wealth was just coming out of from nowhere. It was just crazy. This allowed me to buy even more food to prevent my villagers dying from hunger. Come on lads. But first, you must understand that the core of this game is very straightforward. It is basically focuses on food and firewood. These are practically the only metrics that exists, as the only economy in this game is food and firewood. If you look at all of these people, like seriously look at them, they are only working for two end goals: food and wood. That's it. Everything else does not exist for them. They don't know anything beyond it. I continued to build and build new houses until I reached the desired number to accommodate everyone. But the key problem was mostly about the transportation of food from the end of the map to the trading post, and from the trading post to the markets. As I mentioned before, the more people I had, the more food they consumed, which became a big problem as people were dying of hunger, or possibly could die from hunger. That was the only limiting factor of my population growth. Furthermore, the problem was also in production of firewood. The city became so broken, so dysfunctional, that the people were doing useless things in large quantities. For example, I kept building firewood production places, but it did not work. It didn't give me any results, so I built more and even more, but until something else started to work or didn't work at all, and I had to stop trying eventually. Additionally, my PC was getting extremely hot every time I turned on the game. The loading screens were taking over 5 minutes, and I started to suspect that the game was handling it very poorly. But for the sake of the experiment, I had continued playing. As I had continued playing, I thought of an idea to introduce sheep into my village. I assumed that I could use them for meat and create a new and never-ending supply of food from a completely different source rather than relying on trading posts, which were already oversaturated. So I bought some sheep and gave them space to eat, drink, and to multiply. I thought I would be able to exponentially grow my sheep numbers to the extent that I wouldn't have to worry about food and sheep numbers. But after I had practically filled the whole map with my sheep, I realized there was no way I could actually use them to make food out of them. The only option I could actually use them for was actually to sell them, but that was useless, and most importantly, it would also put more strain on my trading sector. So there I was, with hundreds of sheep which were only taking up living space. So my plan it basically backfired me and literally backstabbed me in the rear. Thus, I just have a lot of sheep which I could only sell, and if I sell them, that actually does nothing because I already have huge amount of wealth from nowhere, seriously. But you may ask me why I couldn't just build more trading posts to ease the bottleneck that was already there. Well, the problem wasn't the number of trading posts, but the mechanics of how the traders work. And to be totally honest with you, they work pretty slow and horrible. They literally go outside the map and stand around the goat. A freaking goat, and it seems like they are worshipping it and giving it goods. Jeez, jeez, goddammit. I wish I was that goat, but the key problem was right in front of me, and I didn't know how to fix it. Trust me, I tried, but the problem only continued to worsen. My theory is that the more villages there are, the longer everything takes to do a job. It's like it takes them not 1 second to make a decision, but 2 or even more. And when I said 2, I meant 2 minutes, not 1 second, not 2 seconds. This is actually really horrible. They are so slow, and this effectively paralyzes the city to its fullest. Well, despite these issues, trading for food and firewood was still working to some degree. So I still tried to reach the largest population possible, even if there was a risk of hunger. I built more houses in the case I ran out of them, and let the simulation run overnight. The night passed, and I reached a maximum of 2,600 people. I thought it would be impossible, but somehow the trading fixed itself to some degree. That number was the peak maximum for me, as I understood it. If I kept the simulation running longer, and I did, I started to lose people in large quantities, which is unacceptable for an industrialist leader like me. But the layout of this city, there you go, the largest city in Manor Lords, which I have created in my whole entire life. I know there are a lot of other videos like this, but I did this one on an old version of the game. With the new update to Manor Lords, which brings many changes to the economy and trading system, it would be interesting to try this again and see how it works. The traders with horses can carry now hundreds more goods than before. If this video gets any views, I might attempt this again. We'll see. Well, thanks again for those who watched till the end. Please subscribe. I would appreciate that, honestly. And thank you for watching, and have a peaceful sky.
Si no tienes los 18, eso es cárcel. Si no son mayores de edad, pa' tu casa. A ver, poco yo.